Good morning, student. Welcome back to our physics class. Last 2 days we are revised the chapter magnetism, light and simple machine. So already we revised this chapter. Today we revise force and friction. You did it in your half yearly exam, so it is in our annual part. We revise it one more time. Many times you revise this chapter, but before the annual exam, one more time we have to revise. In this force and friction chapter, what is the push and pull? There is an interaction between two objects by means of a push or pull. This is act of push or pull caused due to an interaction is called force. So what is the force? The definition of force is, we can define force as a push or pull acting upon an object as a result of an interaction. Okay, now effect of force. What are the effect of force? Force can move a stationary object. A force can stop a moving object. A force can change the speed of a moving object. A force can change the direction of moving object. A force can change the shape and size of the object. These are the effects of force. So we have to learn the effect of force. Type of force. Contact force. There are two types of force, contact force and non-contact forces. What are the contact force? Contact force, a force which one act on a body only when they are in contact with the body. That is known as contact force, like muscular force, frictional force. These are the contact force. What is the muscular force? A force that is applied by the muscles of one's body is called muscular force. What is the frictional force? When a body moves or tries to move over a surface, the force that resists the motion or opposes the motion of the body is called the frictional force. So non-contact force are which one? Without contact with the physical contact with the body, acts at a distance. That is the non-contact force, like gravitational force. What is the gravitational force? The gravitational force can be defined as a universal force of attraction that exists between any two objects that have mass. Okay, the gravitational force exerted by the earth is called gravity. What is gravity? The gravitational force that exerted by the earth, that is the gravity. Gravitational force always attracts. Next is magnetic force. This is also non-contact force. A magnet is a piece of iron or other material that has a property of attract metals such as iron, nickel and cobalt from a distance. The force of attraction between the magnet and the metal is called magnetic force. Next is electrostatic force. This is also non-contact force. What is the electrostatic force? All the objects have two types of electrical charges, positive charge and negative charge. Objects that have positive charge attract each other, while the objects that have similar charges repel each other. The force exerted by a charged body on another charged or uncharged body is known as electrostatic force. Okay, Now, how can we measure the force? Force is a physical quantity that can be measured. The SI unit of force is Newton, named by Sir Isaac Newton. And another force is measured, that is kilogram force, kgf. 1 kilogram force is equal to 9.8 Newton or 10 Newton approximately. Next is the frictional force or friction. What is the frictional force and friction? Already we learned the definition. What is the frictional force and friction? Now, the frictional force depends upon the nature of the surface. It depends upon the nature of the surface. How much rough the surface, the frictional force is much. If the surface is very smooth, frictional force is very less. Friction depends on the weight of the moving object. When the weight remains unchanged, the friction is independent of the area of the surface in contact. If the weight is unchanged, then type of friction: static friction, kinetic friction, sliding friction, rolling friction. What is the static friction? Static means not moving. Static friction is the force of friction acting between two objects in contact while at rest. Static friction is maximum when the applied force is just short to the force required to start motion. Next, kinetic friction. What is the kinetic friction? Kinetic means moving. Kinetic friction occurs when the applied force overcomes static friction and the object starts moving. At the point the value of friction is represented at kinetic friction. Kinetic friction also two types: sliding friction and rolling friction. What is sliding friction? When we slide an object on a surface, the friction produced between the object and the surface is called sliding friction. Since friction increases with the weight of a moving object, it is difficult to slide heavy objects. Rolling friction. If heavy objects made to roll over a surface to move them from one place to another, rolling friction comes into play. On hard surfaces, rolling friction is less than sliding friction. These are the types of friction. Now, advantages of friction. What are the advantages of friction? Friction helps us walking. When we walk, friction opposes the tendency of our feet or shoe to move backward by acting in the forward direction or the direction in which we want to move. In the absence of friction, we may slip or fall. We can sit on a chair due to the friction. If the friction is not there, we cannot sit on the chair. We slip. Cars and buses are able to move safely on roads due to the friction between the tires and the road. When we apply brakes, the force of friction between the brake shoe and the rim of the wheel allows us to stop a bicycle or a moving vehicle. Friction always asks to hold object with our hands. Friction always asks to write on a paper. Without friction, we cannot write on the paper. Friction helps us to light a matchstick by rubbing it against the matchbox. So these are the uses of friction. We can increase the friction by some situation makes, like tires of all vehicles have grooved designed or threads to make their surface rough. Like this way, the shoes of footwear are also provided with grooved designs or increase the friction and avoid slipping. Spikes are provided in the soles of the shoe used in sports persons to increase friction. The handles of motorbikes are covered with a rough towel, cloth, or any rubber things to increase the friction. Sand or gravel are often sprayed on slippery ground to increase friction and make it easy to move on them. So these are the increases of friction. Disadvantage of friction is also there. Friction produces heat. So the fast moving machines produces a large amount of heat which damages their moving parts. Friction produces wear and tear. A lot of energy is wasted due to friction. Reducing friction by ball bearing, providing wheels, oiling or lubricating, polishing, streamlining. These are the we can reducing friction. Now come to the exercise revision worksheet 3. Already 1 and 2 I provided. Now number 3, revision worksheet 3. Fill in the blanks. Muscular force is an example of dash force. Muscular force is a contact force. Another name of contact force are action at a distance force. The SI unit of force is Newton. Weight remaining the same dash is independent of area of a surface in contact. Friction. Weight remaining the same. If the weight remaining the same, friction is independent of area of surface in contact. Sliding friction and rolling friction are types of kinetic friction. Rolling friction offers less resistance than sliding friction. Frictional force is a contact force. Dash force. Gravitational force is responsible for the weight of an object. A car can skid on a wet road due to the reduced friction between the road and the tires or less friction. Dash helps us to walking. Friction helps us to walking. Now, next, write the true false. All objects have two types of electrical charges. I'm extremely sorry. That is two types of electrical charges. It is true. Gravitational force is a contact force. False. Friction has no role in our walking or running. False. Friction wears down the parts of the machine. True. Boats and ships have streamlined shape. True. Force as a push or pull acting upon an object as a result of an interaction. That is true. So number A is true, number B false, number C false, number D true, E true, F also true. Okay. Next day again we will learn another chapter. That means we revise it. Okay, today up to this.